Hey guys, Ryan Dement from Chasing Financial Freedom podcast. I hope you guys are having a great day. This week on the podcast, we have Robert Fehlen, and I think I got his last name right because I hate butchering last names. Robert is an entrepreneur. He started 2 businesses. He's got some great background for you guys that are doing Johnny side hustle that want to get out of working your 9 to 5 and getting into your business, being an entrepreneur. Robert, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ryan. Super happy to be here. Hopefully there's no storm noise in the background or where the walls cave in from the tsunami it seems like we're having, but we'll keep rolling with it.
Awesome. Stay safe. We don't want you to float away out there.
Absolutely.
So tell the listeners a little bit about your background before we get into your journey.
For sure. So at a high level, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio right now. I've got a wife and one great child and another child. And they switch back and forth at times. No, they're both, love both of them. So been in the entrepreneurial space for, almost 4 or 5 years now at this point. Previous path, I started out, as a lot of entrepreneurs do, mowing lawns. Early on, jumped into roofing when I was 14 years old, just saving cash for college, ultimately with a goal of, hey, how can I graduate college debt-free? While I was finishing up, was blessed with the opportunity to start just at a financial assistant position with a private equity group out of the Midwest, and work my way up the ranks there before ultimately deciding to make the scary leap.
So I have to ask, at the age of 14, you were in the roofing business. Were you physically working on roofs, or what were you doing in the business?
So towards the tail end of it, I was actually laying shingles at the top. In the beginning, it was just carrying shingles up on the roof and doing the grunt work of cleaning up everything on the ground. My old boss, if he somehow came across this, would probably hate this, but he gave me a hard hat and a clipboard and said, hey, if you see a white truck pull up, make sure you have this on. You look like you're just taking inventory and not actually working on the roof. So, in that industry, they make it work. So,
hey, that's pretty awesome because not to bash generations, but a lot of the younger folks, and I'm a little older than you. We've lost the ability to work hard and go through that process, and that's really cool that you did it at the age of 14.
Absolutely. No, it's a challenge that's starting to show up, and starting to see that trend happen even more with what these generations have been through COVID.
So you are seeing that, or you're not seeing that? Sorry, you cut out.
Yes. Yeah, no, we are seeing that. Even, one specific example, I've heard multiple stories around even individuals I know with their children that were able to be on unemployment for a time and get a taste of that throughout the pandemic. It really set them back in motivation and opportunity as well.
And are they actually seeing them readjusting and coming back, or are they kind of still set back?
There's been a few, even in the past week, I heard a story that their son is still set back at that point, still staying at home, kind of lost that motivation to grow once he started to see some of those checks coming in.
So how does, and we'll go down a path, but I got to ask the last question is, how does that son support himself? Is his parents supporting him, or is he actually have like a side gig, or?
Right now he's staying at home. So he's right in that college age, could be a freshman in college at this point. But the parents are in a way enabling it at the same time.
Wow. I mean, we just opened up a whole nother conversation that we weren't going to talk about.
Rabbit
so
trail.
I apologize. So let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey and so forth. It started at 14. I like that. Before that, you were mowing lawns. What got you into wanting to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I can point back to the time. So my grandfather down in Georgia, before he passed away, he and my grandmother owned a small sub shop. And during the summers where we'd go to visit, we'd get the opportunity to sweep the floors and wipe the tables at a young age. He would take me on delivery orders in the van. And the summer where he passed away, I got to spend time down there and get to sit next to him, whether on the couch or next to his bed, and just ask a lot of questions and learn so much about business, being a business owner, the tool it can be to impact people and provide jobs and really create the life that you want for your family. So I was fascinated by that. You can even look back at that point after that conversation. My high school grades, my first 2 years of high school weren't that great. And then after that summer, I actually started to take things seriously moving forward. But I always had the itch from then on. I knew I was going to be in business, just wasn't sure what it was going to be at the time.
So did you actually go to college and graduate?
I did, yeah. So I finished financial management, bachelor's of financial management.
Got to ask the big question.
Yeah.
What you learned in college, how often do you put that to play in your businesses?
That's a great question. So for me, I went through, so I did my bachelor's degree in 3 years. And for me, it was more about getting that piece of paper. I was lucky enough that the firm that hired me on probably should have had a bachelor's degree before I did to get started with them. And honestly, what I learned there, I was being able to take back to some of the more complex classes, already having the answers from being able to learn kind of in the field as well. So I think it's a great opportunity to push yourself and set a goal and show you can consistently get through it. But there's nothing like learning in the trenches.
So would you say college has benefited you in your entrepreneurial journey, or would you say that learning in the trenches is giving you a better grasp on how to be an entrepreneur?
So I'd say the one piece that I can pull out of my college degree that I would encourage most entrepreneurs to have in their pocket if they can is I was able to take 2 different accounting classes. One, it gave me the benefit of knowing ahead of time I did not want to be an accountant when I grew up. and 2, it gives you a good understanding, a baseline understanding of, hey, how does the profit and loss work, your balance sheet, those numbers there inside your business. That way you can have more educated conversations with your accountant, with the experts that are in that field as you're growing your business.
So if you had to do it all over again, would you go to college, or would you actually just try to learn the things that you've actually taken away from your businesses today?
I think it'd be easy to say, hey, no, I wouldn't go to college again. But even looking into the industries and the opportunities that are out there, I still have a foundation inside of a corporate world that I was able to get because I was pursuing a degree or had a degree that without that knowledge I was able to gain there, I probably would not have been able to go as far as fast in the entrepreneurial side. So looking back, I still probably would go through that again. But at the same time, recognizing it's not for everybody. We've had people we've hired on our team. We didn't realize they had an MBA till after they started with us because that's just not a place we put a level of emphasis. And we've got other folks on our team that have nothing in the way of college education that are still great.
Wow. It's amazing that it's just 2 different sides of the story, because I have a bachelor's degree and I have a master's degree, and I don't put a lot of that to work in my businesses. And I don't know if I'm honestly, I'm on the fence. Some of the things I learned in my master's program, I would say, yes, okay, go do it. But at the risk of racking up student loan debt, I don't know if it's worth it or not. I mean, that today, if you can put in hard work and time and learn on the job and you're smart enough, I think anybody can become an entrepreneur if they truly want to and it's their passion. But if you're truly not excited about that, I don't know why people are really downplaying the trades and where that's going, because we need plumbers, we need electricians, roofers. I mean, we need all these things to keep the economy going. What's wrong with that? I mean, I just read an article the other day. Walmart is paying their drivers $100,000 a year, entry-level drivers, to come out and work. $100,000 a year. No college education.
Right. No, and you brought up such a great point with the student loan debt. I mean, I encourage folks don't go to college to find yourself while racking up debt at the same time. Get a job. What you want to do with your life is going to change. And yeah, I have other friends and individuals around me that, because they racked up that student loan debt, have always, on a couple occasions have said to me, man, I always want to make that that leap in entrepreneurship, but I've got this cloud of debt that, my spouse would be unhappy or I'd be unhappy or insecure jumping out with that burden. So
it's hard. I mean, it is hard. I mean, I jumped, I'm, I've got two businesses that failed and a third business I'm, succeeding. It's always after passion. But the first two businesses I was carrying student loan debt and it was tough. But it's a matter of what you want to do and are you willing to put in the time and effort to get there? And I think that's where there's a little bit of a disconnect between the generations. Unfortunately, the internet has become an instant gratification for a lot of people, and they think that's how life is, but they don't realize below the surface of the water, there's all the problems that entrepreneurs go through and the sleepless nights and living on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It's tough. It's not meant for everyone, because if everyone could do it, then we would all be doing it.
Absolutely. No, one of the most ironic terms that I hear thrown out there, of course, all the time is passive income. And that could be a whole conversation of the individuals that are out there striving for passive income don't realize the the activities that have to take place in order to achieve that so-called passive income.
Yeah, and I've never understood that in all my life, especially in the real estate space. Everyone talks about this passive income. Well, guess what? All the work you've got to do up front, your due diligence to make sure you can get that passive income, because otherwise it'll flop.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and on the opposite end, I'm sure you've seen of where you have other people that are doing it for you, right? Whether it's through funds or syndications, like you've had to have a lot of activity in your life to build the income and the savings in order to be able to invest in that. It's still not passive at the end of the day.
No, it's not, and you have to work for it. I mean, it boils down to how bad do you want it? Is it your passion? And then once you're passionate about it, then you find a way to do it and you just don't give up. I mean, is everything going to succeed? No, but if it depends on if you get back up every single time, because ultimately you'll find a way if there's a will in there. And I don't know how many, all the entrepreneurs I bring on the show, they all have they have one consistent theme. They're persistent and they stay there. I don't know a lot of other people outside of entrepreneurs or small business owners that are wired that way.
Absolutely. No, if you're idolizing the end goal and not enjoying the journey along the way, you'll burn out very fast, very fast.
And it's tough to stay at that pace and to continue to go. It's a daunting task, to say the least. So let's digress. I got down a hole, and I always do. So let's talk about, what you're doing and your entity. So what got you there, and why did you start these businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I take it back to one of my goals in life is just to be able to pursue passion and opportunity regardless of time and location. So I don't have a dollar amount attached to that. I don't have a revenue amount necessarily attached to that, because I know if I'm focused on the revenue and the dollar amount, that's going to be a distraction. It's going to be heartburn along the way. Versus if I can reflect back on what my why is as an individual and what I want for my family and community and people around me, it can help me go a lot further, right? And have that stomach for the pain along the journey. So with that in mind, my journey kind of started in the entrepreneur space. Going to my wife, we had a great income. I had worked my way up to head analyst on a portfolio. We had about $2.5 billion of real estate at that time in the company that I was working for. Great salary. We were flipping a house. We had a rental property. And life was good, right? We were in the Midwest. Like, this is supposed to be the American dream. And I went to her and said, hey, what if we got rid of all that? What if we tried this thing on entrepreneurship? And of course, I think her jaw hit the floor. We had multiple conversations over a few months. And at that time, I started to sit back and reflect on, my schedule, what I was doing, and realize, hey, I've got a wife and 2 young kids. If I want to keep those in my life, like, something in my life has to change. We ultimately made the decision to leap out into Colorado. This is the first point really in my life that I didn't have the A to B to Z planned out. Wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. but knew we needed to get the kids near the grandparents and my wife near her family and have some support system around her. Through that, started consulting. I fell into financial planning really as a, hey, I've got investment management experience. I like to build personal relationships. Let's do that. Built up a planning practice and realized my passion was around having conversations like these, every day with business owners that are up to big things that are impacting their communities, and wanted to build a life around that. So my personal goal was to sit down and talk to over 100 entrepreneurs and ask question after question of what their challenges were, what their opportunities were, where they got their advice from, and the challenges there. And there were a few key sticking points there that I realized, hey, the service that I'm providing now doesn't allow me to leap out and do that and talk to them about the specific things I want to work with them on. So ultimately had to sell the financial planning practice, the book of business, to another advisor in town, and took the leap into more of a personal CFO role, getting to work with startups to larger organizations as well, and getting to sit on the personal and the business side of life for these entrepreneurs. Ultimately, at a high level, that took us down the path into real estate, back again into investing in that, and merging the marketing agency out of Cincinnati as well, which is why it's brought me back to the Midwest again. So 10,000 or 30,000 foot view. That's kind of the story there.
So during that journey and all the changes, what would be your three things that you would take away from each of those steps to get you to where you're at today?
Yeah, so I'd say the three main takeaways I'd have. One, if you're starting to explore into this world of entrepreneurship, or if you're in a business and you're trying to scale up, is put an emphasis on asking questions. It's amazing what you can learn and the relationships you can build and the connections you can have just by asking the right questions to the right people. I had someone tell me they use the phrase, leaders are remembered by the questions that they ask, and that's stuck with me. So there's that. The other thing I'd add is people always say it's who you know, right? It's who you know, it's who you know. And I'd argue it's not who you know, it's how they know you, because they may know you, but if they know you as the young kid that used to grow up in their neighborhood and raise hell around the neighborhood, like that's you may know them, they may have a lot of sway and power, but that doesn't matter, right? How do they know you as an individual? And the third is, for me at least, every time I figured out the 5-year plan, it changed. And so realizing over time that it's more about the journey than the destination was huge, because it allowed me to sit back and allowed me with my co-founder now to sit back and say, hey, we can pivot and operate and still see that as success, versus now where we're headed in the trail that we're headed may have slightly adjusted and the target may have adjusted. It gave us that liberty really to pivot as necessary.
So with the 5-year plan and the pivoting, did the 5-year plan pigeonhole you to where you couldn't pivot because you were trying to hit the 5-year plan? Or were you able to say, okay, I have a vision for 5 years, but it might not look like that in 5 years, and we're going to pivot and then readjust? Or did you just flat out say, okay, we're scrapping the 5-year plan and making changes to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's honestly led to a change in our entire strategic planning structure with our team, how we even operate inside of our year by year. But for me, yes, early on, it was, hey, this is the goal I'm laying out. I back into the actions I have to take. And I was headstrong, and these are the actions I keep having to lay it. And there were other opportunities that were popping up that I was turning away or pushing away or not even seeing, because I was so focused on like, hey, this is the target, this is the number I want to achieve, versus realizing, hey, things change, markets change, opportunities change, and we have to be willing to pivot.
So do you think there's blind spots for entrepreneurs when it comes to planning? When I say planning, it's very broad. So let me narrow that down. When to plan for scale, growth, and financial success?
Let me just repeat the question, make sure I heard correctly. So what are the challenges? Are entrepreneurs pigeonholing themselves? in the areas of planning, whether it be for finance and scale and growth. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
100% agree. One of my favorite questions early on to ask entrepreneurs is, when was the last time you got out of your business and created that longer term plan? And then the follow-up question to that is, when did you pull that plan back and check in with how you're doing? And a lot of times, when it comes to financial forecasting specifically, like I've got a really large philosophical difference in how financial forecasting today in the world works versus how it should work best for entrepreneurs. And a lot of times we build that long-term plan and then it goes into the filing cabinet or into the trash can because 3 months from now, the life and the business has changed. We undersold or we oversold, that plan at that point is even irrelevant.
So how would you suggest an entrepreneur attack that? Because everything is fluid. I mean, everything changes on a day by day basis. And one of the things that, I can tell you from my side, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, is if I don't know my numbers, I don't know my cash flow, and I don't know what we're doing, I'm useless as the business owner, entrepreneur, whatever. So first step, of course, is know your numbers. But as things expand, contract, like you said, you oversell something or you undersell something. How does the entrepreneur react to that? And what should they do with that data?
Sure, absolutely. And some of that has to do with what are we tracking towards. So if we're tracking towards, hey, this is our target income, and that's the highlight. And if we're with a team or a solopreneur, and that's what we talk about and focus on at all times, are we even tracking or looking at the right things? Like, is it the amount of income? Well, the income really is just a result of all the actions and activities that we've done over the past 30 to 90 days in most cases. So for us, where we've adjusted has been coming up with more of an annual theme of like, here's the core theme. So for us this year, it's been building a scalable team of experts that we can basically not outsource the work to, but almost duplicate ourselves in the work that we're doing. Because if it's taking all of our time, there's only so much you can grow when you're trading hours for dollars. So coming up with what is that theme, overall direction where we're heading. And then I'm a big fan of the 12-week year, the book that's out there, and we've adopted a majority of those principles where all we're looking at is, hey, over the next 12 weeks, what are the 3 core areas we're working on in people, purpose, and profit? And then inside of those, here's the major activities that we're going to work on, and we keep it as simple as possible. And there's one name attached to each one of those. And what happens is it gives us enough over 12 weeks of like, hey, we can probably project out with a reasonable expectation of what we can do over the next 12 weeks versus if in the growth mode that we're in, looking out a year, I can't tell you what a year is going to look like. So it allows us enough. And too, as these opportunities pop up, it gives us the grace to say, hey, we're going to push these opportunities off for now because we're focused here within inside those 12 weeks. But at the next 12-week mark, we can refresh and look, hey, does this make sense to bring in or pivot at that point?
So do you bring, whatever points you're working on during the 12 weeks, do you bring all those items, tasks, whatever you want to call them, to the finish line after 12 weeks, or do a percentage of them not make it? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So in operations, we break it down further into sprint plans where we're working off of 2 weeks. And it's simply, hey, we use, we're a big fan of ClickUp. We use the cards, we attach everyone's name on the team to it. Here's the deadlines inside of that. We meet weekly, and then we do one of the things, if you're managing a virtual team, we found to be successful is rather than trying to find a time to do a daily huddle with everyone that works for everyone's schedule across multiple time zones, is we do a video huddle where people can check in and say, hey, here's the sprint items I'm working on today. Here's where I'm stuck. Here's where I need help. And then if they have capacity, what they can help others on. And then it goes into our Slack channel. We can see that throughout the time. So our goal, and I'd say we did well, very, very well early on, of like 100% of the items that are going to be in our sprint, we're going to complete. If that takes Saturday and Sunday, we're going to get it done. As things have grown, our target is closer to 80% of those items. Can we get that done? Because there are going to be things that we get stuck on or we're waiting on an outside party from that we can't push across the finish line, no matter how much we want to.
So as you grow in as an entrepreneur, and also on the other side of the world, when I worked in corporate America, our sprints and our forecasting and in our updates weren't 80% successful. It was more like a 50-50 at times, just for the simple fact, for the sheer size. We're talking tens of thousands of employees. I mean, so you just you can't, there's only certain things you're going to be able to get done. And that's corporate America, unfortunately. But from a entrepreneurial standpoint, what should an entrepreneur look at when he or she's trying to scale and build that team, whether it be virtual or in person or a hybrid of both, whatever? Where do they start? I mean, I don't know if you want to pick a business type and we can kind of go through that, because I know we have listeners that are struggling to scale or struggling to get out of their 9-to-5 to get that business off the ground. And they're looking for help, and they need to find a way to get out of that 9-to-5 and into that entrepreneurial role, but not at an expense that they kill themselves, basically, and living in the business 24 hours a day.
Absolutely. No, that's an excellent question. Where I start first is like, what do I value in life? And then where do I get my energy from? I do not get my energy from printing out files, scanning, uploading emails. Scheduling is a huge one. My calendar is super important to me, but I don't want to be the one managing it at the same time. So I had a mentor that encouraged me early on of regularly track energy gain, drain, both in your personal life. So we'd go through this exercise of, okay, in my business life, here's where I'm gaining energy. Here's where I'm draining energy. Then same thing in the personal side. And then it starts to take action. Okay, is there something we either need to cut out what we're doing, rethink how we're doing it, or automate it? Or lastly, is there some place that we can outsource it to others? And ultimately those tasks will accumulate where you can start to bring on another person onto your team to take care of those. And there's plenty, we've used virtual assistants in the past. Like that's been helpful when you're specific and manage it appropriately. And then there's the other piece of balancing between putting all your chips on the table for a future date versus taking income now. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's really up to the individual business owner what's really important to them. Is it super important to replace my income from my job so that I can leave as soon as possible? Well, if that's the case, like hiring somebody else to take on these tasks, we may have to just step up and be willing to do that for a time at the same time.
So I just I'll give an example because I know somebody that I'm talking to and this could potentially help them. So they're still working their 9-to-5. They have a concept that's working. It's in the real estate space. It's a little different than most. It has some technology behind it, but it's also real estate investing. They want to raise capital, and there's so many ways you can raise capital and so many different ways to do all that. For you, what would be a suggestion, since you've got real estate experience also? How could an individual that's still working, has the concept marked up, all ready to go, has the presentations, and he has actually practiced on me and some other individuals for investment, and I've shot him down on some stuff and he's getting better. But from that point, let's say he works out his pitch deck and he's got everything going. Where does he go to get his first $1 million?
Absolutely. So one of the greatest pieces of advice I got early on was start talking to people that have the capital before you need the capital. So, we early on, like on the analytical type, like I want everything to be perfect. I want the pitch deck. I want to have my note cards bulleted out. And one of the greatest ways to build these connections with the people that have the capital is to just ask for advice. And people can be afraid of, hey, I need an NDA to protect my IP and things like that. Be willing to go to people and share your idea and ask for advice there. And ask them, like, if you know that they have the capital, they've invested in things like that in the past, ask them what would they need to see in order to be interested in a project like that, and have the market and those people tell you how to present it as well. And also realize you're going to get a ton of no's along the way.
Yeah, and the no's is the biggest piece. But I want to back up one step even further backwards. how does one connect or find individuals that have capital?
So one place to start, of course, it can be LinkedIn. It's obviously on the scale of like warm to cold, very much on the cold side. But it's, starting back with who do you know in your circle that may know other individuals. And so asking them for advice, asking them for those introductions. And the other side, this may be difficult inside of a 9-to-5 job, but networking events. I'm not a huge fan of traditional networking as it stands, but there are some after hours and VC, equity groups after hours as well that you can start to meet up and collaborate and share ideas. So just putting yourself out there before you have all the answers.
What would you suggest then if you think the traditional is not the route? What other route would you go?
Yeah, so if I'm starting, I have zero connections, I've got an idea formulated, I'm not sure where to start, I probably would start inside those networking events and see who I can connect with outside of the event. So go in there and get the right names to connect with and sit and just ask a lot of great questions, get to know them, see if I can provide value to their life, and then ask them specifically. Most of the time people are pretty good about, hey, what do you need help with? How can I support what you've got going? And one of the greatest things early on is asking for those introductions there.
Are there specific groups or types of groups you would suggest?
So depending on where you are in the country, I'm a huge fan of 1 Million Cups. They're all across the U.S.
Yes, they're all across the U.S. Yes.
It depends heavily on the city you're in. If there is a VC or equity, if there's a higher percentage of that industry in your city, there's a lot of VC or angels like after hours as well, and events that are good to attend. My favorite place to go when I'm looking for events is just Eventbrite, and it's just searching business like this is the city, and you're going to find a lot of groups that you don't want to be a part of, and along the way you'll probably find one or two that you'll enjoy.
That's good. That's because you'd be amazed how many people ask and say, hey, I need to raise capital. I'm like, don't we all? We all work at it, but it's how much time and effort you put into it. I know myself, I know I was over 50 no's before I got a yes. And I did traditional, but I did a little networking on LinkedIn, but mine was more just talking to people within the industry that I was in at the time, and working in corporate America. And then that led me to other people, and it led me to another group of individuals. And then it just kind of started going down the road. But, one of the things, and if you go back and look when I was doing this is 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, my videos were horrible. And I was putting videos out back then, and they were atrocious. And I look back on them, I'm like, oh my God, who would want to do any type of business with me? And the funny thing that happened was 2 weeks ago, a gentleman called me out of a video that I did 4 or 5 years ago, with an investor group, and it was horrible. I mean, and when I say horrible, it's not like I'm afraid to talk or speak or anything like that. I was all over the place because I was so excited, and there were so many people in the room. And he's like, oh yeah, I saw your video from 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. I'm like, oh my God. And I had to ask, what do you think about it? And he goes, it's interesting, but I've watched all your videos lead up to now, and all of a sudden he says, you're like a totally different person on camera. And I said, yeah, I've worked on my speech and my pitch and what I'm doing. And I said, guess what? 5 years ago, I wasn't doing it from my heart or from my passion. It was truly all about the money. It was all about driving the dollar. And now it's all about the passion. And once that hits your heart and you start doing that, I joke about it. We're a for-profit, and, a byproduct is we make money, but we help people along the way. And it's a great feeling, but oh man, you know what? I might link my old video in the show notes when we launch this out, and people can see it. I'm embarrassed, to be honest, but I'm also not embarrassed to show that there's growth. And that's the one thing that I tell people is, don't be afraid of your failures, because your failures are teaching you something to get better in life.
Absolutely. I had a mentor share with me, and I've heard this phrase from a few others as well. But if you're not looking back at what you were putting out and doing a year ago and laughing at yourself, like you're not growing and developing enough. There's that benefit of like, hey, it's great to look back and laugh and see where you've come from. It's also nice in the moment to know, hey, what I'm stressed out or worried about putting out there into the universe, someday I'm going to look back and laugh at how much emphasis or how much concern I had around it.
Yeah, and it's amazing what you put out back then versus now, but how you grow. But tying it all back into individuals go out and put videos out on YouTube, TikTok, or wherever you're talking about social media, and they think it's going to be an overnight success. And then they see, oh crap, it's not that easy. And then I always come back and tell them, guys, that's entrepreneurship. It isn't easy at all, and it's not for the faint of heart. And you're not going to put out one video and then all of a sudden it be perfect and your life changes. But we all go back and we look at the Steve Jobs of the world, and then all these unicorns that are out there getting all this money. Dude, those are like so rare. That's why they're called unicorns. And one guy was telling me, oh, look, what about Gary Vee? And I said, now Gary Vee, if you go back and look at everything he's done, look where he started and look at some of these old videos that he's selling wine in his dad's shop in New Jersey and how horrible they are. But guess what? He never gave up and he always just kept on going. He's not an overnight success. He's 15 years overnight success.
Oh, you're exactly right. I mean, to your point earlier of, the challenges around social media and these generations as well. One of my challenges inside of networking, and of course what you see on social media, is it's easy to share the highlights. It's not easy to share challenges and the pain points that we have going on right now. So, on Facebook, what are folks putting out? It's the success, the client stories, look at me, look at what I've done, versus being able to see behind the scenes of what we're actually going through. So that was to my point of why traditional networking for me is a challenge, because you walk around and hand out business cards and everyone's business is going great. And it's like, hey, if it was amazing, you were selling and you were beating all your goals, like, why are you here searching for more business?
Exactly. And just being honest and truthful about that and where that actually goes. And that's the biggest piece I try to tell these guys is, you know what? It's not going to be all roses. It's not going to be perfect, but you fighting for what you want to create is the biggest thing. And it comes out as passion, and investors will see that. And they're like, okay, there's something there. Of course, whatever you're selling or making, widgets, whatever, it has to be viable too. But if you're just bought in for the money piece, it's not going anywhere.
Absolutely.
So
to your, the investment question too. The other thing that I found, there's a gentleman that I know here and actually up in Dayton that hates going out and talking to folks, hates, doing pitches, anything like that, but he loves marketing. And where he started to find success is in the crowdfunding space, where you can be extremely broad with your audience. You can practice and prep and do your videos and your pitch deck ahead of time. And then leverage his knowledge in marketing to reach people and raise funds versus having to go out and knock doors.
Yeah. And last year we started a nonprofit. And it's one of the things that we're looking at is once we get our 501c3 wrapped up from the IRS, God, that'll take forever. But anyhow, that's what we're going to do. Crowdfunding. I mean, that's really where for us, it works because we're in the affordable housing space. And a lot of people don't understand that, but being able to put the right video together, the right pitch deck, and then be able to hit a broader audience from that standpoint, we'll get $10 or $15 donations or raises. That's fine because every dollar just goes towards the building of homes. That's what we're looking for. And that's the audience that we go after. Yeah. So I've got to ask, we got to get into your real estate before we wrap this bad boy up. Talk a little bit about your real estate journey.
Yeah. So that was another one of those things that was on the 5-year plan, where the organization that I had left, there was a little bit of time where I wasn't able to enter that field very quickly. So I had to wait out a couple of years. My goal inside of the equity in the real estate was, hey, I'm going to help these business owners grow and scale. And most of the individuals that I talked to, in their business, they viewed that as a risky enough asset that the stock market and the bond market may not have been as attractive or exciting, or they really just wanted to limit that to their 401k. And the people around them, we're talking about real estate, and it's all over social media, the coaches and training that's out there. People are more familiar with that concept. So after being a year and a half into launching into that more personal CFO work that I was doing, was approached by a couple potential investors / business owners that were like, "Hey, we know this is your background. Why aren't you doing this?" And I couldn't come up with a good reason. And so that was one of the opportunities to pivot. So I ended up looking for other people in the field that got to touch other parts of the industry that I got to see, but didn't necessarily touch the day-to-day. Got us together in one room, and we're like, let's come up with all the excuses as to why we're not going to do this now. And we couldn't come up with anything. So we ended up launching our first project. We spent a lot of time diving into the markets we wanted to focus on, close on our first project in 2021. And then our second which was 78 units. And then our second project we just closed on a month and a half ago, which would have been 56 units as well. And we're still looking to grow and expand there. But we're really taking our time with this market, making sure we find the right deal.
Hey, that's pretty awesome that you're able to do that and take down that many doors. So that's a positive. I know a lot of people that syndicate and are in that market. It's competitive, but you can find some really good deals per door. For me, I would love to do it. My plate is full, and I do enjoy the hunt. The one thing that we're trying to get into and looking at is commercial. There's some strip malls that are coming, to market, and there's different things that you can definitely look at to be creative in that commercial space. So we'll see where that goes. But at some point, we'll look at syndication. But it's a little further down the road. It's probably my 5-year plan.
5 years. Okay,
so
well, hopefully then for you, it'll show up in the next year or two then.
Yes, we'll see how that goes. So how could everybody get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you?
Sure. My favorite place to start would be LinkedIn. Just shoot me a message on there. And then I love doing virtual coffees, or for, local or for some reason, then love getting together and grabbing lunch. But more than happy for people to reach out and connect. I'd say just mention where we came across. So if it's this podcast here with Ryan, make sure to call that out. But happy just to have conversations.
I'll put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes so people can reach you there.
Excellent.
Well, sir, I thank you, Robert, for coming on. It's been a great conversation. Lots of good information. And I'll be honest, I want to probably have you back because I think we didn't get deep enough in, and I didn't go down a couple rabbit holes that I wanted to. So definitely be looking out for you to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Ryan. Love listening to some of the other guests you've had on as well, and look forward to chatting again soon.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.